Hello, ladies and gentlemen, friends and family. We have an excellent Ask the Doctor show for you today with Dr. Ben Tapper. And I have to say, the Epstein files coming out right before this interview with Dr. Tapper is extremely timely, I must say. And you're probably saying, this is Ask the Doctor. What are we talking about the Epstein files for? Well, you might be surprised at how all encompassing, including in the health world and the scamdemic, the pandemic from a couple years ago, these Epstein files have. And if you go back, if you've been following Dr. Ben Tapper's work for a long time, you know that this is a world that he's dabbled in. This is a world that he's been talking about for a long time. So we're going to kind of look at that, some of the things that they discussed, and then real world science with some other work he's done in the past. So without further ado, we bring in Dr. Ben Tapper. Doctor, it's really incredible when we went through everything in 2020 with the pandemic and the excellent team of doctors at the wellness company, yourself, all of you guys were standing up for our freedoms, standing up for our truth, the entire team of doctors at the wellness company. And you said, something about this pandemic feels off. It just doesn't add up. And then the more you guys did the research, the more you realized something seemed off. Something seemed like this was by design, by plan, all the different points of evidence. Now they're talking about it in these emails. We see Bill Gates. We see other people talking about, how can we plan a pandemic? How can we make money off of a pandemic? For you to read that stuff, just from the perspective of just being a doctor, caring about your patients, caring about humans' health, but B, somebody that was there with the entire team of doctors here at the wellness company who sponsors this show, what was that moment like reading that stuff as if we had any doubt? But still, to read it and to have it confirmed like that, what was that moment like for you?
Well, I mean, I'd love to say it's vindication, but I feel like it's really the people that are reading these articles are really, I feel like, already like-minded in that area. But I just pray that this reaches the masses, and I just wonder, and I ask the question, what is it going to take for, you have the people on the left side of this whole political stance, they're just deaf and blind. And they just don't want to look into the information. They just think it's conspiracy. But again, I think that this is confirmation to what we've been saying all along. I mean, in these Epstein files, they discovered that they had a blueprint, a 20-year blueprint for, a pandemic to turn into a profit machine. And that's what this has been about. It wasn't about health. This was there by design to bring in a vaccine and to profit billions of dollars. And that's what they are doing. And that's what this is uncovering. So I think that, if this makes the masses, it would cause a revolution overnight.
And, it's so funny as I'm listening to you talk here, I did a quick Google search just to see. I was like, is anybody covering this? Is anybody covering how they talked about pandemics for years before 2020 and how to run it and how to run simulations and how to profit off it? And lo and behold, I'm not finding anything, Dr. Tapper. Nobody in the media is covering this.
Yep. And, that's not surprising. I mean, I'm in a massive lawsuit against the CCDH and Imrod Ahmed right now, and the Trusted News Initiative, which is basically, the government colluded with social media and news stations to silence and suppress information that could have saved lives. And so they censored and suppressed myself and 12 others, known as the Disinformation Dozen. I've been a victim of government oppression here in our own country. And so this needs to be talked about, but no mainstream news is covering any of this information. Why? Because they're complicit. Make no mistake, they're complicit at covering this information, censoring this information. They're guilty. So, this is why it's important that we support independent journalists like yourself and other people out there to get this information out to the people, because you're not going to hear it on the mainstream.
Yeah, and again, when we go back to 2020, it was like, okay, hold on a second, let's take a pause. Let's not shut down the world here. Let's not run with the panic button that they're trying to get us to push with the mainstream media and the death charts and the red alerts and everything else. We said, hey, let's take a pause. And now when you realize, okay, there was some sort of conspiracy to launch a pandemic. There was some sort of conspiracy to try to use that to then centralize power, whether that be with the World Health Organization or some other institution. And then, of course, in the background of all of this was one of the giant, most biggest wealth transfers in the history of the world. Quite frankly, it was so damaging to the U.S. economy. I think it's permanent damage. You know, we all see the charts with the inflation and everything going right up there after the pandemic. That damage to the economy was probably permanent. But okay, let's step back. Let's talk about humans' health. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that a lot of people lost faith and trust in these institutions, like some of the ones you've been battling. Maybe it's a good thing because they have been lying to us so much. You know, the Maha movement within this Trump administration, RFK Jr., we've learned a lot about the food pyramid, people's diets, things that we've been eating that's not good, the truth about vaccines. So it's kind of this weird catch-22 where it's like, okay, well, we're glad that you're not trusting the liars anymore. But then it's like, how do we restore faith in any of these institutions to say, hey, it's okay if we're promoting the right things?
Right. Well, I'm with you, Owen. I don't think we should put our faith in these three-letter organizations, the government officials at all. I mean, I think Thomas Jefferson said it best that, if the people let the government decide what foods they eat, what medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in a sorry state as those souls who live under tyranny. We cannot trust the government when it comes to our health. We need to, take our health in our own hands here and make better choices, and we can't trust these three-letter organizations. I mean, look at the food pyramid, for crying out loud. Like you brought that up. If you were to follow that food pyramid, which so many people have done, it's a recipe for autoimmune disorders. It's a recipe for chronic disease, inflammatory issues. Why? Because all of those foods on there are basically government subsidized foods, and it's going to, bring disease. A lot of them were GMO modified foods. I mean, it's glyphosate rich foods. I mean, for crying out loud, 6 to 11 servings of grains and whatnot. And so we cannot trust these three-letter organizations, and to restore trust in these three-letter organizations is not the solution. I think we need to trust the God-given innate intelligence inside our body that we can be well if we give the body what it needs, and really take health in our own hands and eat well, move well, think well, pray well, and we can be well. And that's really the key.
Why is Bill Gates apparently so interested in people's health and vaccinating children, say in Africa? Why is this such a cause for him to be involved in?
Well, I mean, look what he did in Africa. There was, I think, a lawsuit filed against the Gates Foundation for, he promoted, I believe, a certain either HPV vaccine. I forget the vaccine he was promoting, and so this was for health. But they found ovarian toxicities associated with this vaccine, and it was hindering the reproduction system in these females. They targeted women from 15 to 35. Which is your reproductive age, which is also very concerning. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole, I think, and Bill Gates has said he believes the world is overpopulated and they can reduce that population through vaccination. So, I think that homeboy is out there trying to, really go after, the population. And he's admitted it. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what he's trying to do. And so, this is why he's involved. His dad had a hand in Planned Parenthood, and he passed on that, his beliefs on to Bill Gates. And so this is, this isn't really a conspiracy anymore. It's out in the open. I mean, he's out there saying that. He's giving TED Talks talking about it. And you look at the mRNA vaccine. There was a study out of Japan, a pharmacokinetic study, that talked about how they had 64 ovarian toxins associated with the mRNA vaccine. And so I believe, and now we have more reproductive issues than ever before. And that is not by coincidence. Look at who's investing in the vaccine. Bill Gates himself. He even said that he's getting a 20 to 1 profit from these investing in these vaccines. One of the best investments he's ever made. And he's been on record saying that.
It's one of the weirdest things too, when you could be like, hey, I think we've seen multiple cartoons, whether it's like the sheep going to get their fur clipped, or like turkeys going to get slaughtered for Thanksgiving, and the one turkey stands up and he says, hey, they're going to slaughter us, and then the rest of the turkeys say, oh, shut up, this is all free and loving. It's a little worse than that, though, because we'll say, hey, there's a group of eugenicists, or they believe in population control, and they basically are poisoning our planet. They're poisoning our food. They want to make you sick and stupid to kill you off and destroy your bloodline. And they'll say, oh, that's some conspiracy theory. And then it's like you said, you can go to one of these TED Talks. You can go to many presentations where they talk about how, hey, there's too many people. We're causing pollution. We're causing climate change, all these other issues with the planet. So we need to get the population down. So it's like, here they are saying it. But when we say it, we're the giant conspiracy theorists. So I think it is important that you have to understand their philosophy. Their philosophy is they believe they've ordained themselves the stewards of this planet. They think there's too many humans, but they're going to be nice and kind and kind of subtle about it. Like, yeah, we'll throw some poison in some vaccines. We'll throw some poisons in the food and the water. We'll dumb them down. We'll keep them distracted, and slowly but surely we'll kill off their bloodline. And this will be better for the human race on the planet. That's their philosophy. They say it, but when we say it, somehow we're conspiracy kooks.
That's it. That's all by design too. You're labeled a loon, a conspiracy nut, or disinformation, whatever it may be, and that's by design. A conspiracy theorist, we have to look at when that was really coined, and I believe that there was some psychological warfare happening with that to really discourage you from even asking questions and looking deeper. But make no mistake that they want to paint Bill Gates as a philanthropist, good guy here to save the world. But really, you need to look further past that, really start thinking and using your noggin and asking the right questions. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's, another illustration is the axe giving a presentation to the trees and say, hey, I'm all for you guys. But the trees are like, yeah, he's one of us. The handle's made of wood. See? And that's the way I view Bill Gates. He's not one of us. He's not even on the same planet we are in, and he doesn't know what it's like to be you or I. He lives in a different world or a different realm. And I believe that Bill Gates needs Jesus. I think he needs a rude awakening here and really change his perspective. And this is that, he has put himself on a pedestal. He's ordained himself as the savior of the world. And that's a slippery slope when you don't know Jesus.
And his wife has had a few words to say about this in the recent days, with Bill's name coming up multiple times in the Epstein files. Of course, Bill offered a pretty strange response here recently as well. I don't want to focus on, let's say, the desperation of Bill Gates to get some action at Epstein's Island, but there does seem to be a larger coordination here, and maybe for Bill, let's say there's different parties involved, and maybe for Bill, he's looking at, okay, how do we get vaccines into people? How do we profit? Maybe some people want to run some eugenics program, depopulate the planet. Either way, we saw them talking about these things in the Epstein files. It's like, do we need any more evidence, Dr. Tapper? Do we need any more evidence that COVID and the pandemic was a scam? It was a plan. They did this to us intentionally. It's like, this is just yet another piece of example where you can say, all right, here you go. Here's the world elites that were all parroting all the different COVID tyranny at the time. Here they are talking about how they want to simulate a pandemic. Here they are talking about it. What more evidence do you need?
I mean, it's, I say we already had the evidence, Owen, to be honest with you. We already had the data manipulation. We already had the dress rehearsal, the Event 201. I mean, just look at the legislation in 2019 leading up, to the pandemic. They had bills coming after our rights and freedoms to take away our rights to refuse a vaccine. And you had the ACIP, which, in 2019 say that, they're going to try to force vaccination, but, through compliance. And so and then the World Health Organization, they made threats about the unvaccinated too. And so all this was leading up to the pandemic. And then, the Event 201 was enough evidence to raise suspicion for an investigation, because they had a giant dress rehearsal 2 months prior to anyone knowing about COVID-19. What is that about? So I think the evidence is already there. It's just a matter of now we need justice. I want justice here. And when is that going to happen? And that's a better question. Who's going to be held accountable?
And isn't that the big thing as we're kind of sitting here just going through all the files? It's like, where are the investigations at least? It's like, okay, fine. I see some people that come out and they say, well, none of this is actionable. And I'll just kind of look at them and say, okay, you haven't read the files if you actually believe that. If you want to say, okay, let's wait as far as charges or prosecution, well, where's the investigation at least? I mean, somebody needs to be investigating some of the things that we've seen in these emails, including one thing, and I want to talk to you about this because you recently reshared this video. I want to share this with our audience here in a second from your YouTube channel, Unlearning the Lie, Dr. Tom Cohen on DNA, Genes, Sickness, and Real Science, episode 34 from the Dr. Ben Tapper channel on YouTube. I want to tie that into some of the other stuff we saw in the Epstein files, where they're talking about super beings or manipulating designer babies or trying to do this stuff. It's like we've seen that kind of thing in pop culture before. Now we see it in the real world with these emails. Folks, before I do that, though, I want to let you know about something going on right now at the Wellness Company. February is National Cancer Prevention Awareness Month. Now more than ever, we need to be asking what each of us can do to lower our chances of cancer. Everybody, you got to be thinking about it, unfortunately, in this world. Diet, health, all of it. For your loved ones, for yourself. If you know somebody battling cancer, we need to make sure that no stone is left unturned in the effort to stay healthy. And we know, of course, when you go through kind of mainstream medicine, they don't like to look under some of these stones because, well, it doesn't really profit the industries. But the wellness company, that's where they come in. And that's where they've come in before, and that's where they're coming in again. The great team of doctors that we introduce to you on this show every week, the Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals that you can trust. They've got a time-proven track record, ladies and gentlemen. The Wellness Company is committed to providing safe, low-cost alternatives to big pharma products, from ivermectin to methylene blue to their fantastic new product, Shield, and so much more. The Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make the promise of the Make America Healthy Again movement a reality for you and your family. So for this February, go to twc.health/Owen, twc.health/Owen. We'll put the link right there on the screen, twc.health/Owen, and check out the new product Shield to help with your health and Cancer Awareness and Prevention Month. Big thanks to the team of doctors at the Wellness Company for bringing this brand new product to us, to you, and for bringing this show to you as well with Dr. Tapper, our guest today. All right, so Dr. Tapper, I'm going to pull this up. I'm not going to play any of the audio here, but I'll pull this up on screen and you can talk about this. And we're gonna really dive deep. I think we'll really dive deep as far as this conversation is concerned. This is the episode I'm talking about. People can go find this on your YouTube channel. Now, we saw them talking about designer babies. We saw them talking about, it sounds like superhumans. I mean, quite frankly, it sounds like something right out of the Stranger Things TV show, if anybody's ever watched that. What were your thoughts? I don't know if you've seen that before. What were your thoughts when they're talking about designer babies, designer DNA, and all the different ways they want to try to manipulate people or give them superpowers? Had you ever heard or seen anything like that before?
You know, and I have. This is nothing, again, nothing new is under the sun here. And I think that when we hear these things, this technology does exist. And I believe that they're tapping into, they're trying to play God with the body. And they have a technology called CRISPR-Cas9 technology. And this is technology that basically can alter, basically tap into the genome, tap in and play God with our genes, and really alter the expression of the genome. And so, to give an example of this type of technology, they created a spider goat. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that, but basically
spider goat. Oh, yes.
Yes. So they, to give you an example of that, and this, but your listeners listening here, they took this goat, basically they used CRISPR-Cas9 technology. They go in, they splice the genome of the goat with a spider, and then the offspring of that goat now is this modified animal. It looks like a goat, it acts like a goat, it eats like a goat, but they can tap in and said, we want the milk of this goat to produce a protein from the spider web. And they can get, and now they got this product that's either 9 or 90 times stronger than steel. And basically, it's through this technology. So, they can modify anything with this technology, and it's a slippery slope. And I always say, if this technology gets into the wrong hands, it's going to be very, very scary, because I don't trust our government. I don't trust big pharma when it comes to our health. And when you have a company, or let's Pfizer, for instance, who tested pharmaceuticals on Nigerian children without their parents' consent. Okay, one of the very, very many violations that they settled in court over. If an industry like that, who doesn't profit when we are they profit when we are sick, gets this type of technology, they'll be able to turn disease on at will, and they'll be able to turn it off. And this is how they're going to present it. They're going to be able to say, hey, we can cure these different ailments that we didn't have cures for. We can cure neurological issues that we've never had cures for, and do a lot of fascinating things with it. Absolutely. I'm not denying that. It's super cool that we can get a product 90 times stronger than steel using goat milk. That's great. But there is a check in my spirit here because they are tapping into the body, playing God with the body, and they'll be able to make super babies. They'll be able to do these different things that we've never even heard of, or it seems so sci-fi that it's unheard of. But they do have this technology, and I always argue that they're going to try to get this into the body somehow to be able to turn disease on. And that to me is my opinion, but it's also a very, very scary world we live in.
Yeah, well, another thing in that vein is we've heard about the rise of some tick that can make you you can't eat meat anymore after you apparently are bitten by this tick. I've seen some grumblings about that. I haven't gone really too deep into that rabbit hole. I guess maybe I'm just avoiding that for my own carnivore desires here to think that that can't be real. But are you saying you think that they can have something like that they can, whether it's a bug biting you or injecting you with something, and then it can basically change your entire genome essentially?
So they tapped into the motherboard of the body. Okay, that's what CRISPR-Cas9 is. They can go in there. You know, when I was in college, my roommate was brilliant, and he literally hacked into the video game, and he could change the bullets around and on the game and change different things. And it was I was like, how did you do that? How did you know how to tap into the game and modify it? And that's exactly what CRISPR does. I mean, CRISPR goes in there and you can modify it. You want blonde hair? They can do things. You want your offspring to have this strength, this gene, you know, the myostatin gene, whatever it may be. They can play God with the body. Make no mistake. So my point is they have that technology and they will probably use it. You know, again, if there's an incentive for us to be sick, and that's when they profit, make no mistake, they will make us sick with this technology. And I think that is happening. You know, and what I say, and how can they get this in the body? And they're doing that through, I believe, vaccination. And so when, you know, I always say what the seeds are to the farmer to bring a crop, vaccines are to, you know, big pharma to bring disease. And so it is a concern when we, you know, look at all the autoimmune disorders, look at all the neurological developmental delays, demyelination diseases, cancers that are associated and been tied back to this vaccine. So, and I always going back to Bill Gates, you know, I know that he's not a man of integrity, but when you have, why is he so concerned with ticks or mosquitoes, things that actually bite onto the body or get into the body maybe for a prolonged period of time? I mean, mosquito, when it bites you, it's sitting there for, I mean, sometimes maybe a minute at most, but maybe less than that. But a tick can be on the body for a long time without you even knowing it. So, you know, why is he investing into maybe modifying these ticks or even getting into that? And why is he talking about it? Because it can get it can get into the body. So he views those little insects as almost vaccinations. He's even said that on his TED Talk. He views these mosquitoes as little vaccinators. And to me, Bill Gates, you know, needs to stop. He just needs to go on his island and just leave us all alone here, right?
Yeah, go find an island he can hang out there permanently with the rest of them. Maybe
Right.
that's the solution. Just send them over to Epstein Island permanently and say, hey, you guys liked it so much. You can do whatever you want here. Now, yeah, obviously, and I pulled up some of these stories here. Technology can be used for good or for bad. I have a lot of these debates when it comes to AI. So certainly, you know, you could see this benefiting humanity to a certain level, but it's always about who's going to have control over it, right? You can give a hammer to a guy and he can build you a house. You can give a hammer to the wrong guy and he can bash your brains in. And
That's
so
right.
I think that it's, you know, it's kind of the same thing where it's like, how do we make sure that when this technology becomes mainstream or becomes, let's say, perfected, if we can even use that term, how do we make sure that the people that are going to utilize it and use it are not going to do it against humanity or do it for their own empowerment? Because that seems to be the case. It seems to be the case with a lot of these different technologies that we've seen over time. It's my big concern with AI. So, you know, do we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Do we want to say, hey, we have to make this stuff all illegal to avoid it getting into the wrong hands? How do we, you know, walk this tightrope?
You know, that's a great question. I don't have an answer for that. In my opinion, I think we just need to eradicate that technology. Just, you know, I don't trust the government with that technology. I don't trust big pharma with that technology. And they're the ones that are really pushing this technology. So to me, it's a very, very slippery slope. Again, you know, I think there can be some benefits to it. Absolutely. But maybe have some bills in place that they can only use it for certain types of maybe neurological diseases that we don't have cures for. There has to be some very strong legislation to protect us, to protect our health, and to protect our freedoms around this technology. Because again, it's a slippery slope, and I don't even know if legislation is the solution here. I just don't know.
I'm curious if you can even delve into these numbers or these phrases that we saw. They talked about stage 3, stage 2 in some of these Epstein emails. I can even read some of this for our audience and for you. I'm wondering if you have an interpretation of this, because again, when I hear this stuff, I'm thinking like, this sounds like Stranger Things. They're trying to make like, super babies or something. It talks about here in one of these emails with Epstein, Ammon Paris was about to write you and it popped up. She is a classic stage 3 in the model outlier who is intelligent, was traumatized when she was young. Traumatization, again, part of the theme of the Stranger Things with these developments that they can have with special abilities. Now gradually coming into her own, becoming self-realized, starting to develop special abilities. Do you have any interpretation of this? Again, my interpretation is it just sounds like they're in the Stranger Things lab, traumatizing these kids, trying to invoke some sort of a chemical or psychological reaction to then release some sort of a special ability that might be dormant in humans that they're trying to tap into. What do you interpret when you see this?
That's a good question. I think that I view this all through spiritual lenses. And so when I think special abilities, I think maybe, there might be some interpretation of the spiritual realm on that side of things. But again, I think it's all, really spiritual. When you really look down and deep into this, we read these emails. Again, this is so evil, what these people are doing. Again, and I think I view it from a 30,000 sky foot view. And again, it's very much they're tapping into the spiritual realm here with people. I mean, we're spiritual vessels, right? And I think you look at fluoride and the calcification of our pineal gland, all these different things are a real thing, and so, people are spiritually, I would say, dormant. They're spiritually numb anymore. And I think that has a lot to do with the fluoride in our water. It has a lot to do with, and that's by design. The evils that be here are trying to make us completely spiritually bankrupt. We're not just humans having a spiritual experience, but we're very much spiritual vessels having a human experience. So when I hear special abilities, maybe there's some spiritual discernment that she's coming about here, realizing that these people are evil bastards and that she's seeing that. But again, I don't know. I can't translate that email or interpret it. Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, and I'm going to go real deep into the conspiracy world with you here. There's people interpret some of the ancient human history when we see these hieroglyphs, like, humans with cat heads and stuff like that. And they think, well, maybe at some point in human history, we were actually trying to merge different species or even humans with different animals. And I'm curious, it's like, is this just some level of dark human history repeating itself? These mad scientists in a lab with virtually no oversight. There's no oversight of humanity. There's no oversight of some government, even if there was a good government to do something like that. It's like, are they trying to find different abilities? Because we all know different animals have different abilities. There's all kinds of different animals that have all kinds of different abilities, whether it's sonar or other type stuff. It's like, I could see these mad scientists, if they're not stopped, getting to that point. I could seriously see them getting to that point where they say, hey, let's try to make a human with sonar, or let's try to make a human that can see in the dark, or all these different abilities that different animal species might have, to try to use CRISPR technology or the merging of different human species DNA with different animal DNA. I mean, it's like, that's where, if these mad scientists are not stopped, if they're willing to create viruses in a lab and release it onto the planet and nobody's going to stop them, I mean, what's going to stop them from going there eventually? I feel like that's where this all ends up.
It's all spiritual. It's all spiritual. This is spiritual warfare. That nothing is new under the sun. You go back to biblical times. I mean, you have the Nephilim. You have all these, there's almost transhumanism back then. You look at all this stuff. I mean, this is, mixed bloodlines with the Nephilim. That's biblical. I mean, and so I don't think, again, nothing is new under the sun. I think that these, people have always tried to make the body better than what God created it to be. And that's, again, there's this real desire to play God with our body, to make us some super species. And I don't think that is, far-fetched. I think that's happening now. And I think that's a real thing.
All right, I want to kind of get back to some health topic stuff, and I want to talk about cancer. It is Cancer Awareness and Prevention Month. The Wellness Company wants everybody to know about that. They got a brand new product, Shield, right now that my audience can go check out at twc.health/Owen. They're really happy about this product, folks. They really want you to give it a try. twc.health/Owen. We'll tell you more about that coming up. But when it comes to cancer, it's obviously a scary thing, right? Nobody wants to die. And you go to the hospital or a doctor, and they're always going to kind of tell you what they were taught. And there's a lot of debate about what really works, what doesn't, is the best route to go, what the medical industry is going to tell you, and mainstream medical industry is going to tell you is the best route to go with a different option, a more homeopathic option. People talk about parasites and fasting, and there's all kinds of different solutions that they offer. When you have this debate, or you contemplate this stuff yourself, where does your mind go? If somebody comes to Dr. Ben Tapper and says, I found out I have cancer, what does Dr. Ben Tapper think? What advice does he give?
Well, I say, look at the treatment. The prognosis in this country, and it's terrible. It's lousy. Again, the cancer industry, big pharma, they don't want to cure cancer. They want to manage it. And that's really what we're seeing. The cancer industry is a very, very profitable industry. I think last year they brought in over $220 billion. That's with the B, people, $220 billion the cancer industry brought in last year alone. Okay, so they don't want to cure that industry. They want to protect it. They want to manage it. And look how fast they brought this vaccine during COVID. Okay, and it's supposed to save us from COVID. And if the government really wanted to cure cancer, they would. We're not curing it. The chemo treatments are absolutely lousy. They poison the body. Their whole methodology of curing this is to tear the body down, to radiate, to cut things out. I always look at the wilted plant. What does the wilted plant need? You look at these cancer allopathic docs, they're going to say, oh, you need to medicate it or vaccinate it or radiate it or, cut off its leaves, and really the plant just needs water and it can be well. And that's the way I view the body. That's the way I view disease and cancer, especially building the body up. That's what we need to do. There's only one thing any physician can do for a patient, and that's to remove the obstruction to healing, thus facilitating it. And so giving the body what it needs, and it can be well, I firmly believe that. So, whether you fast or supplement or, healthy lifestyles, how many people do you know focus on healthy lifestyle, choices, and then their cancer started to disappear? Whether cancer is parasitic, like you said, or fungal, I have a theory that it might be even fungal in nature. I study mushrooms, and I study a lot of. I have a mushroom farm at home, and it's fascinating. I always say what the nervous system is to the body, the fungus is to the forest. And so, I always tell patients, fasting, focus on lifestyle choices. There's things you can do out there to really help eliminate. And obviously, eating well, moving well, think well can really help.
And they do have a parasite cleanse option at twc.health/Owen, ivermectin plus mebendazole. We all got that one wrong the first time, but we got it right the second time. Mebendazole right now, a good option if you're thinking about a parasite cleanse. I highly recommend it. You will notice at least a little difference, maybe a big difference, depending on how bad it is. You might notice that. But again, it's just like, I think that people are just struggling to trust anything that the mainstream medical institutions tell them. They're looking for anything outside. If you get into really late stage cancer, by then, is it too late, do you think then, or can you still look at some of these alternative options?
Absolutely. I always say, hope is the most powerful drug there is. And so if you're still breathing, there's still hope. And so, the wellness company has like you brought up the ivermectin and the Men-Ben. How many people are using that now and actually are talking about how their cancer started to disappear? So what does that tell you? I mean, the ivermectin, it's a parasite, basically medication. And, so many people are talking about, a lot of medical professionals are saying that cancer is parasitic in nature. And I know people personally that were taking this combo and their cancer disappeared. And then, you talked about the Shield product. Well, Dr. Victory from the Wellness Company, she formulated that whole supplement herself because she defeated cancer herself. And that, there's mushrooms in the Shield. There's the reishi and the turkey tail. There's also, if you look at the turmeric, look at all the mountain of literature that talks about turmeric and the association of its, the benefits of fighting cancer. Turmeric is very, it's very powerful. It's anti-inflammatory. It can help, and there's so many benefits to that. So the Wellness Company has some really good options to look at.
Well, and we had a promise. The last president promised he was going to cure cancer, but I don't know. I guess we kind of forgot about that one conveniently, huh?
Yeah, right.
It really is amazing. And you would think too, with all the philanthropy of Bill Gates and all the millions of dollars we've spent on cancer research, that we haven't been able to cure it. It almost makes you think that we're not really looking for a cure, doctor.
Right. Well, if you look at the agouti mice, we studied the agouti mice because why? It's very, you can replicate the results very, very conveniently, and it's very efficient and also very persistent with the results. If you feed them a certain diet, if you keep them pinned up, they're going to get fat, they're going to get sick, they get cancer, and they die. So we studied the agouti mice. I believe there was a doctor out of Australia that said, why are we doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results? Isn't that the very definition of insanity? Basically, he took these agouti mice, he put them in a different environment, he actually brought them together. Instead of isolating them, he changed up their diet. And he, put a playpen in there. So they're very, very active. He gave them a healthier diet. And what do you know? They didn't get sick. In fact, they were healthier, and their offspring actually changed colors. Their coat started to express genetically this different coat. It was a healthier coat. And so he was persecuted and said, you know what, don't ever bring that up again, basically. And it got brushed under the rug. And so if, it's again, we have to look through different lenses here. If we're trying to do the same thing over and over and over and expect a different result, this is the very definition of insanity. We need to change things up and view cancer differently. Why does cancer have a blood supply? Does anybody ever think about that? Why does the tumor have a blood supply? The body is innately very smart. There's that innate intelligence that's telling your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe, your cells to communicate. There's that innate intelligence. I mean, if you have a cut, you put a Band-Aid on that cut, the body heals. We don't ever question it. We don't ever doubt that it's going to heal. And so, cancer, we just look at the tumor and say, oh, that's bad, we need to cut it out. We need to look at cancer instead of just compartmentalizing this disease. We need to look at it as a systemic type disease. And that's how we should go about it. It is a systemic type illness, and approach it from that angle instead of just compartmentalizing it and just trying to remove the tumor thinking we got rid of the cancer. Why were we sick in the first place? What's wrong with the body and what's causing it? And that's really focusing on the cause instead of the symptom.
And I'm sure you saw this. It was a big news story just last week. Scientists cure pancreatic cancer in mice. Could it work in humans? I could pull the gentleman up, and he has a memorable face because he has some sort of a skin pigmentation issue in his face. So he kind of has a memorable face for that. And so I think it, in an odd way, it kind of helped the story go viral because people were like, "Wow, that's an odd-looking gentleman." So my concern is, and I think we've even seen some of this in the past. It's like, when you get close to actually solving a major health issue, let's say cancer, and then the industry that makes billions of dollars off of this sickness hears about it, sometimes you got to be concerned for these people's health. You got to be concerned that there might not be an accident or the building where all of their work and science burns to the ground. And so is this something, though, that you think could develop further and maybe we can find something that can work in humans?
I firmly believe there's a cure out there. I believe that there is absolutely, the body can cure anything in an instant if you give the body what it needs. And I believe that firmly, full well. And I always say that, your body's ability to heal to overcome cancer and other diseases like COVID and other ailments is far greater than really anyone has ever permitted us to believe. We just got to give the body what it needs, and I believe we can heal anything. So really, looking at those treatments and those protocols, I do believe that I believe there is a cure out there.
Mariano Barbacid was the gentleman's name, pictured there on the screen. Mariano Barbacid. So remember that name. That name could be coming up again. All right. Here's one I want to talk to you about. I think you'll really like this. As we get more science and technology developments here, we're able to really zoom in on the process of how the body works even more. We're able to zoom in. We're able to zoom in on even how a baby develops in the womb. And it's like the closer up of a view we get to this stuff, like watching white blood cells take over or watching DNA chains form and break down and reform and all this stuff, watching a baby, build up in the womb. To me, it's like you see this stuff. How can you not believe in design? How can you not believe in divine creation when you see this stuff? And we're kind of getting into this new realm. And people have been saying this for a long time, but it's kind of becoming undeniable. If anything, science proves divine creation. Science proves that there is a God that designed us with these unbelievable innate abilities. So that's what I see. When I see these different videos, DNA chains and all this stuff, babies forming in the womb, to me, it just reasserts that, yes, God is real. God made us. How can anybody think differently, Doctor?
I mean, I that baffles my brain as well. I mean, just like Romans 1:20, I believe it's Romans 1:20 that talks about seeing God's creation and denying his existence. I mean, two cells come together in the womb and then form this miraculous, baby forms, right? And there's been, I believe, videos, and we've seen that there's almost a light that occurs during that interaction. So absolutely. Another thing too, I always say, by design, and if you look at, I believe it's the plant hopper, grasshopper. If you look at this turtle grasshopper, okay, there's actually gears in the pelvis, okay, and so if you search, plant hopper grasshopper's pelvis, you can see the gears in the pelvis. And now, if I were to show you metal gears, and I asked somebody, hey, how much you want to bet that this was man-made? They would bet the farm this was man-made, absolutely 100%. Well, if I were to show you a picture of the gears in that pelvis, you would say that was by design, intelligent design. There's got to be a designer. You have any doubts? Well, why do we say that was just by accident? There's an evolutionary, just random occurrence that just happened. Yeah. That's absolutely is the dumbest argument ever. It takes more faith to believe that, actually. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that I defend all the time, that, God made the body and he heals the body. And there's that, and he put in innate intelligence in all living things. I mean, and so, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and it probably won't be too long till we actually see robots walking around, walking around some of these hospitals, doctors' offices, and maybe it's for a good thing. Maybe it's a tool. It can be used for good or bad. But that's like, if I let's say, see a Tesla Optimus robot, and I'm like, oh, wow, that thing must have evolved from a lug nut, right? Oh, yeah, that Optimus robot evolved from a lug nut. A lug nut was just sitting there one day, and then over 1 million years, it became an Optimus robot. No, obviously, somebody made that. That's kind of the analogy that I think of for people that still believe in the theory of evolution that, to me, has been totally disproven. Do you think a lug nut can evolve into a robot? No, of course not. Somebody built that robot. Somebody took the elements and built a robot, just like God took the elements and built human.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the fossil record says it all. There are no transformational fossils in the fossil record, and so that's, science is observational. We have to look through the lenses of observation. I don't believe in science. I don't believe in evolution. I mean, that's like faith. That's a religion at that point. Science is a tool that we learn through the lenses of observation, and observational data shows no proof of evolution. So,
yeah. We got a question from somebody in the chat here. I'm wondering if you think about this. We saw some rumors, some conspiracy theories about stuff they were putting in the vaccines to basically turn humans into, putting something into our blood, whether it's graphene or something else, putting something into our blood to send us some sort of a wireless signal to control us. were some weird videos about people walking around in graveyards and picking up Wi-Fi signals. Is that something you're concerned about? Do you think about that, or not so much?
I do think about that. I wonder, again, with the CRISPR-Cas9, you look at the DARPA connection there and what they want to do. I mean, they want to create a world where there's no cell phones. Everything is just this universe that there's no separation between technology and the world we live in. So, I think that they're trying to tap into the nervous system and our thoughts. I think they're trying to control the thoughts, and I think of a day where we might live in a time when, if you think about a crime, you're guilty, even though you didn't commit it. And I think that's something. But looking at the vaccine and what they put in the body, the one thing I am concerned about are these fibrous, basically they're obstructions in the vascular system that they've been pulling out of. I've talked to many embalmers, and they have said some of these embalmers have been doing this for 30 years, and they said they've never seen anything like this prior to the COVID vaccine. These have the consistency of a rubber band.
Just so people understand, you're holding this up for the screen right now. This is literally being pulled out of people's veins right here.
Yes, veins and arteries. Basically, these embalmers, they go in, they just put embalming fluid in. Well, a lot of these embalmers, they couldn't get the fluid in. And so there was an obstruction somewhere. So they had to figure out where the obstruction was coming from. And then they put a lot of pressure in, and these things would come out. Some of these I've seen that were almost 3 feet long. Again, a lot of these embalmers, I was very skeptical when I heard this, and I called all these different embalmers. And I was just doing my own investigation, and they said that, they've never seen anything like this. And in fact, at one time, they were pulling this out of 60 to 70% of bodies that they were embalming. Which is, a lot of people say, well, you can get white clot formations through heparin exposure, but these are not from heparin exposure. This is an amyloid protein, which means amyloid is usually from neurological, toxicity or neurological degeneration in some fashion. So,
and this all started right after the COVID-19 vaccines.
Yes, right. So, I believe that this vaccine is a bioweapon. I believe it was targeting the nervous system, which is the master control organ. Why wouldn't you? And these clots just so happen to form in certain vital areas of the body where you won't be able to survive. We found a lot of these clots in the liver, around the heart and lungs, and even in the brain early on. So, it's very concerning. So going back to the, rabbit hole, do they put something in this vaccine to control us or to be controlled by Wi-Fi signals? I don't doubt that at all. You look at the graphene oxide, theories out there, but I think that definitely I do think that this formation is a reality, and I think that is occurring.
Another thing that shocked me, and I was even more shocked to find out that these stories were years old. Are you sharing your brain with Apple? Now, Apple's earbud technology, they have a patent for it. This isn't a secret. There's a patent. It's a public patent. You can read it. And it talks about how, to put it simply, that when you're wearing your earbuds, they can measure your brain waves. And now I kind of tie that into some other stuff that Neuralink is doing right now, where they're able to put wires and stuff in people's brains, and they can play video games and kind of control a computer and all this stuff. It's all mind-blowing to me. I see this stuff and I almost don't even believe it. I'm like, really? Do we have this ability to read your thoughts? Really? We have this ability to control a computer or something with your brain? It's all kind of mind-blowing. I struggle to believe it. And yet the stories are out there. The science is out there. The technology is out there. Where do you think this goes, doctor? I mean, this is not, we're talking about really, if this stuff expands in 50 years, humanity doesn't even look like humans anymore.
Right. I see an Orwellian nightmare. I see government overreach, again, preemptive, crimes that, if you just thought about it, you're guilty, even though you didn't commit it. But they're like, oh, you thought about it. I think there was a movie out there with Sylvester Stallone. Didn't they say there was a movie out? I think
There was a movie with Tom Cruise with pre-crime, Minority Report. There might be some other ones. Minority Report is one. They just came out with another one with Chris Pratt called Mercy. I think it's in theaters right now.
Right. Yeah. And so preemptive crimes, I think that's a reality when we see this, measuring your brain, your thoughts. Not only that, think of political, it's going to make Watergate look like Mickey Mouse. I mean, they can be able to tell who's going to think about running for office, in political positions.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's going to make it. It's a very interesting world.
It makes you never want to wear those earbuds again. I'll tell you that.
Dude, well, just look at the radiation exposure from those. I never wear anything like that. I don't even like having my cell phone next to my head.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, I had a radiation meter. I forget the unit that they were measuring in, but at the time I had this unit that measured radiation. And you see some of these influencers doing this now. They'll take this little meter and they'll go to the phone, they'll go to the earbuds, and it's off the charts. Safe levels from EPA, safe levels. And I remember FaceTiming on my phone, and I put it on there, and that thing just went bonkers. It was acting like it was broken. It was just like danger zone, danger zone, danger zone, too close. And it was just too much radiation. And it baffles my brain that these things can be used day to day, and the earbuds put, right between the brain, and nobody even bats an eye on it. They think it's fine. There's no way. So if you're going to use anything like that, I always have the wired headphones. Plug in. Don't put the phone next to the head. I don't like that. I always talk on speaker, or I always use the wired headphones when I'm talking. So it's just too much EMF exposure, radiation exposure. It's just not healthy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way. I will admit, I try to find the middle ground. So I kind of have this wireless, like wired headphone. So it's like, it has the wires, and then the wireless thing is like not next to your head. It's like kind of on your shoulders. So I sacrifice. I'm not a purist on that deal. But I do think there's just better alternatives. There's definitely better alternatives than sitting there frying your brain. I'm the same way. I'll never put my cell phone up to my head. Speaker, if I've got plug-in headphones available, whatever I can do to keep that away. A lot of people now too, making sure you're not sleeping around your Wi-Fi router, right? It's like, okay, we all got wireless internet now. At least try to not have it where you're sleeping at night. Some people even turn it off at night. And you do wonder when or if we're ever going to reach some conclusions about this stuff and say, okay, yes, it was causing this problem. It was causing that problem. And now we're going to adjust.
Right. I mean, look at the amount of neurological developmental disorders, demyelination diseases, than ever before. I mean, and I think too, anxiety or mental illness, people are so on edge, and I think a lot of this radiation or the EMF exposure puts us into a fight or flight condition. I think the sympathetic overload is a real epidemic. The amount of stress that we have more than ever before, and this is why it's important to I think supplement with Shield, from the wellness company has a phenomenal supplement, the Shield, the ashwagandha. A lot of those things in there can really help combat, the stress effects of the body. And so again, looking at, you said the Wi-Fi router, that's something too that gets overlooked. Just unplug the router at night. You can put these, I think there's timers that can shut the Wi-Fi off at night, but I always try to unplug the Wi-Fi at night. I put my phone on airplane mode. I don't like it next to to my head. I don't like it next to the bed. I always put it on airplane mode, and I put it away from my where I'm sleeping. And I recommend that as well. But that's the Shield, yes. So it has the ashwagandha, which is a very, very powerful supplement to help really combat the stress effects of the body. Again, the turmeric. There's some, it has a capsule form and also a powdered form you put in your water. Highly recommend that. So and again, it was developed by Dr. Victory, who combated cancer on her own by doing healthy lifestyle choices and the supplements that are in this Shield product. She combated cancer and beat cancer by following this protocol. So not saying it will cure cancer, but can it definitely help combat it.
TWC.health/Owen, folks. Remember, coupon code Owen saves you 10%. Coupon code Owen saves you 10%. TWC.health/Owen. All right, a general question for you, doctor, before we sign off of the show today. What is your current status? What grade do you give the Make America Healthy Again movement? Some of the people we've seen come into the administration, RFK Jr. kind of leading it. How do you grade that? How do you measure that right now?
Well, they get a passing grade. I'm going to give them that because I'm very, very thankful that vaccinations have been at the forefront of this conversation. The administration has been great. Second day in office, Trump talked about how we need a $500 billion AI government surveillance system with, and try to promote more mRNA technology. So that right out of the gates was very frustrating. But the fact that the vaccine schedule is diminished, they get a passing grade for that. The fact that we eradicated the whole board for the ACIP, that is, again, those are bonus points. The things that I would like to see, again, they're up against a Goliath. So I'm giving them grace. But what I would love to see is the eradication of the 1986 Vaccine Compensation Act. That act needs to be eradicated. We need to hold these pharmaceutical manufacturers liable again. Because if you have a vaccine injury, you have to file through the VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, which is a nightmare system. It's also a felony to falsify a report. I don't care what Peter Hotez and them say. Oh, VAERS can't be trusted. Only there can be falsified reports. It's an absolute felony to falsify a report, and only the most dedicated, pissed off mama bears file a report. Okay. Yeah. And so, but we need more exposure to that system. We need to make it easier to file. We need to train physicians on how to file, because they're not trained on that, and they just tell patients that have an injury to go and file it themselves. But they also need to be trained on vaccine injuries. They're not recognizing vaccine injuries. And I argue that most physicians don't even have never looked at a vaccine insert. They couldn't even tell you 3 diseases that are associated with an adverse reaction to the vaccine. So train these physicians to recognize vaccine injury when it walks through the door. And so that's what I would like to see out of this administration. But so if I were to give them a grade, I'm giving them a C-, a passing grade, but it's not. They could do better.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot left to be desired. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that we're sitting here like, hey, they're not poisoning the babies with vaccines anymore. It's like, thank God they're not poisoning the babies. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like, that's how bad it was. I mean, that's literally how bad it was.
Right. And my heart breaks. I just wish they would just get rid of the schedule. And then, Owen, answer this. Why do we need permission to refuse a vaccine? Why do I need permission? Why do we need so-called exemptions to refuse a vaccine? And that's, again, that goes to show you the stronghold that Big Pharma has on our healthcare system, the monopoly that they have on our health industry. They think that these vaccines are so safe, and that, if I'm unvaccinated, I'm a threat to public health. And that is a very slippery slope. And that's how they get this legislation to pass, because, we could have a great crisis if we have an unvaccinated population. Herd immunity is a myth. It's herd mentality. I was getting a lot of flack because I was trying to expose this herd mentality, herd immunity theory, which is a theory. Okay. They talk about, we need a 96% vaccine rate for herd immunity to work. And that is absolutely hogwash. Look at how many damn raccoons I have in my forest. I have 1 million raccoons out there. They're thriving. We have so many coyotes. I'm out in the woods. We have so many you can hear them going bonkers. In fact, the DNR said you don't even need a permit to hunt them because they're a nuisance. They're going in, they're killing off our deer population. They're doing all these things. They're thriving. They're not vaccinated. How on God's green earth are they thriving? They're not just surviving here. They're thriving. How are the raccoons thriving? How are the squirrels thriving? How are all the rabbits thriving? They're not vaccinated. How are all the birds out there thriving? They're in nature doing what God intended for them to do. And they never had a single vaccine. And see, this, once you expose that and realize the craziness of the vaccinations and what's in these vaccines, that's another thing that needs to be exposed. If you were to look at like the MDCK cell lines, the Medine Darby Cocker Spaniel kidney cell lines that are in these vaccines, the monkey cell lines, the SV40. Look at the WI32, which is the Windsor Institute 38 cell line, which is coming from female cell lines. Look at that. If people were to look at the ingredients in these vaccines, there would be a health revival overnight, and everyone would stop vaccinating. But nobody wants to take the time to look at the adverse reactions, the package inserts, and the true ingredients in this. And go look at Stanley Plotkin's deposition. So if you're listening, go look at that 9-hour deposition and talk about how many abortions were utilized during the manufacturing, development, and the production of these vaccines. That was a long-winded answer for you, but that's what I like.
It's kind of like you look at the ingredients on the foods at the store, start looking at those, and now all of a sudden, well, you're not really eating them anymore. That's Dr. Ben Tapper. Hey, give him a follow on X if you're so inclined. A good follow there at Dr. Ben Tapper 1. One of the great champions of the team of the wellness company that stood up for our rights and our freedoms during the COVID tyranny. Dr. Tapper, thank you for your time today. God bless and Godspeed.
Yep. Thank you, Owen. God bless.